Mary Ng is the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. Hi, Minister. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Always, Vashi. Very good to be here with you.
My colleague was just talking about the halt on flights, the ban on flights coming in from the UK. It's 72 hours. On what basis will the government make a decision about whether to prolong that ban on flights?
Well, I think that making the decision to stop flights for 72 hours just gives our people some time to understand this a little bit better. They are working with their colleagues in other countries, whether it be the G20 or G7 and others. So our public health officials are on this, and we're going to learn. We're going to learn through this period and assess along the way.
Is there a certain, marker, though, that your government is looking at? For example, if they find evidence of that tight strain being here in Canada, if they do get more data that it is out of the UK, that it is as contagious as it appears to be, are there specifics that your government is looking at upon which they will make that decision at the end of the 72 hours?
Well, I think that is the work that is undergoing right now. And I would remind Canadians, of course, that we do have a 14-day mandatory quarantine. So all travelers coming into Canada, of course, are screened before they get on the plane with temperature and wearing masks as a requirement on the planes, and certainly being screened when they arrive in Canada. So some very stringent requirements as they come into Canada, and certainly for the next 72 hours, there will be no passengers arriving in Canada from the United Kingdom.
Will the government make a decision on whether to extend or stop the ban at the end of the 72 hours, in advance of it? When can Canadians prepare themselves for a decision on that?
I think that we'll make that information available when we are able to do some of the work that the experts and that the scientists are doing right now, along with their colleagues from around the world. Of course, Canada isn't the only country that is, that has done this in terms of stopping flights and passengers from the United Kingdom. So this is the work that is ongoing right now.
If that data is as inconclusive and preliminary as it is at this moment, 2 days from now, do you imagine that the ban on flights will continue?
Well, I think it's too early to say that. I think that we need to let our scientists and we need to let our experts do that work. I would say that this decision is taken because right from the very beginning, our job is to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to help Canadians and keep them safe. And Canada has some of the most robust travel restrictions on international travel. And certainly we have said to Canadians around essential travel, please, non-essential travel, please do not do it. Now is not the time to do it during COVID-19.
Canada has joined a growing list of countries banning travel from the United Kingdom. Officials there are blaming a new strain of the coronavirus for an alarming spike in new cases. In response, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is imposing stricter lockdown measures just days after saying he would relax the rules over Christmas. Andrew Percy is a Conservative member of the British Parliament. He joins us now from over the pond. Hi, Mr. Percy. Good to see you as usual. Thank you for making the time. Oh, it's that time for famous 2020 saying, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, have I got you? Do you hear me okay right now, Mr. Percy?
I can hear you perfectly fine, yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good to see you. I appreciate you making the time. What have you been told about this strain? In particular, we keep hearing it's, for example, more contagious. What do you know?
I mean, what we've been told so far is, and you have to remember the UK has the best genome sequencing facilities in the world, which is probably why we've got on top of this genome sequencing more quickly than perhaps others would have. But what we do appear to know is that it could be up to 70% more transmissible. There's no evidence from what we've heard from our scientific advisors that it results in a more severe illness. I think the belief is that it won't have an impact on the vaccines. So obviously it's that transmissibility which is the problem. This is already a relatively easy to transmit virus. So obviously that's got everybody very concerned here. But the figures our scientific advisors have said is up to 70% easier to transmit this mutant or mutated strain.
And to what degree, at least the information conveyed to you, has it contributed to the spread, the increased incidence of cases? I feel like it was a few weeks ago we were saying, wow, the lockdown had been fairly successful in the UK. They'd cut the number of cases substantially, and now things have changed.
Yeah, well, we'd had a much lower second wave than many other countries in Europe this time round. So for the second wave, we've got 500,000 vaccines already into people's arms. So I think people were starting to feel a little bit more positive. Where I'm sitting here in the north of England, we don't think more than about 5% of new cases are this new strain. But in London and the southeast, it was bizarre or somewhat odd, I think, in the actual tough lockdown, that numbers continue to rise in some of those places. And that wasn't really fully understood. And of course, now there seems to be a clear explanation. So I think people had thought we were rounding the corner and that we were coming through this. But now we've been hit with this, and it is just pure bad luck, sadly. And I think it's got obviously everybody a little bit spooked at the moment.
Spooked, and there are wider economic implications. We don't know, obviously, the full extent of them, and we won't until countries make their decisions around halting flights. But a number of them already have, including this one. What are your concerns when it comes to the economic impact of that?
Well, I think, we've got to be very careful around freight. We're an island in the Atlantic, so we rely on a lot of stuff to come into us over the sea or on air freight. Most of that is unaffected. I'm up here in an area which has, I think, 25% of imports come through the ports in my area here, and most of that is unaided, so that should continue. I think in terms of these travel bans, I think as the Prime Minister said, we understand it. All I would say is at the start of the pandemic, back in February, March, people were criticising President Trump for putting travel bans on, and the World Health Organization was saying there was little evidence it prevents the spread. But I understand why countries are doing it. It won't make too much difference on that particular UK-Canada relationship because, you've not been letting Brits in since March, and we've been requiring you to spend 2 weeks in quarantine here. So there hasn't been a great deal of travel between the two. But I think obviously we're most concerned about our freight movements with Europe, and we need to get those resolved fairly swiftly.
Yeah, are those conversations happening right now? I guess what information will allay their concerns? Is it, for example, when you point out that it looks like it won't affect the efficacy of the vaccine, things like that?
I think that's the scientists have made that fairly clear. There isn't any evidence of that. But obviously what people don't want is to, regardless of whether or not this virus works with a vaccine or even if it gave a more severe illness, the signs are it doesn't. But the fact that obviously it does still kill a lot of people, this virus. So nobody wants a virus that's going to spread. So, what the solutions might, as I say, most freight comes in without, just in cargo containers. But I think the concern is about whether or not HGV drivers will take it over into mainland Europe, although there have been some cases there already. So I think, some ways around that could be possibly rolling out lateral flow tests to HGV drivers going across the border. But those conversations are taking place. I don't think the government here is expecting that the disruption to freight will be for very long. I think it's just to allow our colleagues over in Europe to take stock of the situation. I think in terms of passenger movements, for pleasure, I think that's going to be some time longer. But there are very few places Brits can go at the moment anyway without having to come back here and quarantine for up to 2 weeks. So I don't think many people are expecting or thinking they're going to get away anytime soon.
Just before I let you go really quickly, Mr. Percy, I'm sitting here in a province that's about to enter into a lockdown in 5 days. There's some concern that in those 5 days, people will try to do everything they can and jam it in. I've seen some pictures in the UK before restrictions came in of people fleeing and trying to get out of the UK. What has it been like? What is your sense?
I think the behavioural scientists modelled all of this. People adhered very strongly to the measures at the beginning, but there is just lockdown fatigue. People are just, I hear it from my constituents all the time. I personally, my friends, family, we're all just absolutely sick to the back teeth of all of this. And I think that inevitably people will take some more risks. I think perhaps the fact that there's this new strain here has got people, as I say, a little bit spooked. I've noticed we've got very good compliance, but I've noticed even more compliance today. Like I was out shopping locally today, and a lot of people wearing masks even out in the streets in a greater numbers than before. So I think inevitably before a lockdown, people do take some chances, but I think this new strain should really make people very, very wary, and people should, just have to suck it up, I'm afraid, and comply, because this is still a very serious situation.
Well, we sure wish you the best and happy holidays, Mr. Percy. I appreciate you making the time. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.